Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about metal, rock, and prog music. And I'm making this video today to talk about 25 albums that are coming out in April that I plan to listen to. So hopefully you can stay in the loop on what's coming out, and hopefully some of these sound interesting to you and you'll listen to them as well. Let me know down in the comments which of these you're most excited for, and if there's any that you are excited for that I didn't mention as well, let me know about those. I'm always looking for great stuff to listen to. And if you're interested in the albums on this list, then hit that subscribe button on my channel because every week I post my first impressions on the new albums I listen to. And at the end of each month, I post my top 10 of that month. So let's jump right in. There's 25 albums on my list to listen to in April. I know there's a lot more coming out. I don't have time to listen to everything. So these are kind of the 25 that I decided I'd listen to. Maybe I'll probably end up listening to more like 30 because I'll learn about some that I don't know about today as the month goes on. Without further ado, let's start on April 5th. We have Erra releasing their album Cure. This is the sixth album by this American band. It's progressive melodic metalcore. It's got a lot of that gent guitar playing style, some industrial influences as well. One second here. And this is a great band. Everything I've heard from Erra has been excellent, but I'm not sure if they've ever made anything that I would call a masterpiece or even a near masterpiece. I'm hoping this is the one where they take their sound to the next level, bring in some more variety and experimentation. The next album that I'm going to listen to on that day is In Vain with their album Solemn. This is the fifth album by this band from Norway, and it's progressive death metal. And somehow I've never listened to a full album by this band yet, even though they are right up my alley from the singles that I've heard. Based on the singles I've heard from this album, this could be a contender for being my top 5 albums of the year. That's how good these singles are. They remind me of mid-era Opeth in their progressive death metal days, which is a band I love and my favorite period of Opeth. So check it out if that sounds appealing to you. Next, I want to talk about Hawkwind, a band that's been around for quite some time, putting out their album Stories from Time and Space on April 5th as well. This is their 36th album. They're a band from the UK. They're kind of like psychedelic, a bit progressive, space rock. They've got some hard rock influences as well. I thought their last two albums were good, but not very good. I just respect that this band has been going for so long and they've put out so much music. So I'm really curious to hear how good this album will be so late into their career. Next, I want to mention Dustin Kensrue and his album Desert Dreaming. This is his fifth solo album. He is the lead singer of a band that I love called Thrice. They're more of a post-hardcore band, but his solo material is very different from Thrice, the band. It's more folk rock. It's got some country, alternative, and indie rock influences. It's not really my style, but since I love his band Thrice, that's more on the post-hardcore and alternative rock side, and he's their lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist. I just think he's a great singer and songwriter, so I am planning to check this out just out of curiosity. And next I have Symakya with their album Project 11, The Landing, also on April 5th, the second album by this French band. And I've never listened to an album by this band before, but the early release single I heard from this one, which was called Lunar Obsession, it sounds cool, so I plan to check this out. This is symphonic progressive metal from France. Check that out if that sounds appealing to you. Symakya, Project 11, The Landing. And last one for April 5th today, I've got Vampire Weekend releasing Only God Was Above Us. This is the fifth album by this American band. It's indie rock or indie pop. And I like their last album, Father of the Bride. I like the singles that I heard from this album. I've never loved anything I've heard from them either, but so I'm really hoping this could be the one that blows me away, but they're a catchy, competent indie rock band that are great singer-songwriters. So great players, good performances, good production. Um, just nothing that's blown me away yet. I'm hoping there's something on here that really captures my interest. Now let's move on to April 12th. I've got 5 albums on my list that I'm going to listen to that come out that day. First is Eidola with Eviscerate. This is the 5th album by this American band. It's post-hardcore, but they've got progressive rock and metal influences as well. And I love every album that Eidola has made. The early single I heard from this album sounds amazing too, so I expect this will be excellent at the very least. I think this is a contender for my year-end top 25 for sure. I'm really excited to hear it. And next up on that day, I have Northlane with Mirror's Edge. This is just an EP by this Australian metalcore band. They're kind of progressive metalcore. They play a little bit of the gent style, but I wouldn't say they're a gent band per se. They have a lot of other influences in their sound as well, like alternative, industrial, post-hardcore, emo, electronic. I've seen Northlane live before, and they put on a good show. And I like everything I've heard by them, but I've never been in love with any of it again. That's a pretty common theme for albums on my list to check out here, is like bands that I see are releasing music and I'm like, oh yeah, I like them. Stuff I've heard from them is pretty good, so I throw it on the list. Not as many bands that I'm in love with, but there are a few. Like I love Eidola, and I love uh some of the ones that are to come. Mostly Eidola is probably my favorite that I mentioned so far. Erra would be my next favorite, but there's some other ones to come that I'm really excited about that I'll call out. Next up on April 12th is Ben Sinister with Mostly Great Things. This is the 6th album by this band from Canada. So I have to represent my fellow Canadians here. Much love to Canadian artists. This is indie rock with progressive rock influences. And it's another band that I've never listened to a full album with them before, but I listened to the singles from this. They sound pretty cool. So I plan to check it out and give some respect and love to my fellow Canadians in Ben Sinister and their album Mostly Great Things. And next on my list is Blue Oyster Cult with Ghost Stories. This is the 15th album by this American band who I'm pretty sure is disbanded at this point. They're hard rock, kind of heavy metal, maybe like back in the old school days, their sound would be considered heavy metal. It's quite tame and light for modern standards for metal, so I call it more a hard rock side, but they've got some progressive rock influence as well. This LP features various unreleased songs recorded between 1978 and 83, because I'm pretty sure the band's not making any new material, but it does have one track from 2016 called If I Fell. And in a press release, Ghost Stories is described as a fitting finale to the band's recording legacy. So I think this will be their last album. I don't expect it to be too great because I imagine the band had reasons for not completing and releasing this material at the time. So it's probably not their strongest material, but they are a well-respected band that started back in the 60s, and they're still putting out music now. So I'm interested in hearing it just for the legacy alone. That's Blue Oyster Cult and Ghost Stories. And then my last release from April 12th is on my list is Trifecta with The New Normal. It's the second album by this band. They're a multinational band as different members come from different countries, and it's instrumental jazz fusion with progressive rock influences. This is a super group that features Nick Beggs on bass and Chapman Stick. I know him from his playing with Steven Wilson, but he's been in several bands. Craig Blundell's on drums, who has also toured with Steven Wilson, toured with Steve Hackett, and is also a member of Frost. And then Adam Holstman on keyboards, who has performed with many legendary artists like Miles Davis, Jane Gedder, Steven Wilson, and more. Check this out if you're a fan of instrumental jazz fusion, and if you like how these guys sound when they play with Steven Wilson and others. that the Steven Wilson connection is what got me interested, because I love the work that they've done with him. I like the 3 singles I heard from this album as well. 2 were instrumental, but one called Stupid Pop Song has vocals. The album also features saxophone by Theo Travis, who has played with Soft Machine, The Tangent, King Crimson, David Gilmour, Gong, and more. He plays on one track on this album, and then there's guitar from Alex Lifeson of Rush on one track. So it's a very star-studded cast here. Check out Trifecta, The New Normal, if that sounds appealing to you. Now let's move on to April 19th. A lot of releases coming out this day. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on my list that I'm going to listen to. And the first 2 here are the ones that I'm really excited about, bands that I love. First is Loch, Vostok, and their album Opus Ferox 2, Mark of the Beast. This is the 9th album by the Swedish band. It's progressive metal. I love every album they made. I expect this will be excellent, contender for top 25 of the year for sure, if they can maintain the quality that they are used to putting out. And then Dune, another band I love, is putting out Voidkind, their 3rd album. They're a band from the UK. They're kind of like progressive sludge metal. They've got some post-metal, stoner doom metal influences. I love every album that Dune has made. I expect this will also be excellent. If you're a fan of bands like Mastodon, The Ocean, and Cult of Luna, I think you'll like Dune, so check out their album Voidkind. Next up on April 19th is the Melvins, or just Melvins. I guess there's no the in their name. For some reason, I always want to say the Melvins. And their album Tarantula Heart. This band's made a lot of albums. It's their 27th album. They're from the US, and it's kind of experimental sludge metal with alternative rock, grunge, and stoner rock influences. I haven't heard their 26th album yet, so I definitely haven't heard their whole catalog because it's pretty big, but I did listen to their 24th and their 25th albums, and I thought they were good, but not very good to the point where I was super impressed. I just respect this band. I think they're creative and unique. I appreciate that they've had an over 40-year career since they started now, so I'm interested in hearing this as well. Next up on April 19th is Vanden Plas with the Empyrean Equation of the Long Lost Things. This is the 11th album by this band from Germany, and it's progressive metal. The singles here sound good and catchy. They sound more like old school, like 80s and 90s progressive metal sound, but with even catchier hooks and choruses than most progressive metal bands. So not as much of a modern sound, but a really kind of old school 80s, 90s, but catchy sound here for progressive metal. Check out Vanden Plas if that sounds appealing to you. Next up, I have a punk band called NOFX releasing an EP called Half Album. I think they released a double album before. Was their last release, if I recall correctly. They're an American punk rock band. They've got hardcore influences, but also pop, kind of pop punk. I don't know if I'd go so far as calling it pop punk because it's not as poppy as like Blink 182 or Sum 41 or Green Day or The Offspring or something like that. Got a little more of that hardcore and like skate punk energy, like the kind of music you'd expect to hear when you're playing like Tony Hawk skateboarding video games that used to be popular in like the early 2000s. For NOFX, I've always liked everything I've heard by them as well, but never loved it, never really been grabbed by it. But I figured I'd check this out too to respect the fact that this band has been going since apparently 1983 is when this band was formed, and they're still putting out music over 40 years later that sounds cool. So I will check this out. Next up on April 19th, Balance of Power and Flesh from the Abyss, the 6th album by this band from the UK. It's power metal, but progressive power metal There's some Christian influences, I think, that I saw when I was looking into their genre on Wikipedia. Christian metal was one that was listed. That's not usually my thing, but the early release singles I heard sounded cool. Very powerful female lead vocals in this band, so I plan to check it out. That's Balance of Power, Flesh from the Abyss. Even though I've never listened to anything from them before, I'm just kind of curious about this. Not too many female vocalists in prog metal or progressive power metal, so when they come around and when they sound this good, I'm kind of curious and interested to hear it. Next, I have The Ghost Inside releasing Searching for Solace, also on April 19th, the sixth album from this American band. They're a melodic metalcore band. Another band I haven't listened to a full album by before, but I did hear the single Wash It Away. It reminded me of mid 2000s melodic metalcore classics that I love from bands like Killswitch Engage, Bullet for My Valentine, All That Remains, Atreyu, As I Lay Dying. So I think it'll be a good album to check out if you like that sound. That's The Ghost Inside, Searching for Solace. Then I have SeeYouSpaceCowboy releasing Coup de Grace, like a French title for their album, I think. It's the third album by this American band. It's kind of metalcore, got some post-hardcore, emo, mathcore influences, but it's also kind of like poppy and dancey. And I've seen the term sasscore as the genre, but I don't really know what that means, so I didn't want to use it myself. Um, but yeah, if you know what that means, maybe that helps you understand the sound. Um, I've never listened to a full album by them either, SeeYouSpaceCowboy, but it is a band where I heard the single uh, To the Dance Floor for Shelter, and that featured Courtney LaPlante. And I love Courtney LaPlante's vocals from Spirit Box, from I Wrestled a Bear Once. So when I see a song with her on it and I just click on it and I enjoyed the single. It got me interested in checking out this album. So I'm going to check this out. SeeYouSpaceCowboy, Coup de Grace. And last on my list for the 19th is Taylor Swift with the Tortured Poets Department, the 11th album by this American pop sensation, kind of pop, maybe a little bit of rock, maybe a little bit of country, but she's moved away from her old country sound lately, so I'm not sure how much country will be on here. I'm not even sure why I want to listen to this because while I don't think her music is bad, I find all of Taylor Swift's music just very average, kind of boring and generic sounding, to the point where I don't understand why she's one of the biggest artists in the world right now, if not the biggest. But I am curious to listen to this just to see if I can understand the hype around her. I've tried to listen to a lot of her music, listened to many, if not all of her albums in full, I think. And I like some songs, of course. It's very catchy, but I tend to get super bored listening to any album of hers in full. And I just want to see if this one maybe is the one that doesn't bore me listening to it from beginning to end. We'll see. That's Taylor Swift and the Tortured Poets Department. Now let's move on to April 26th, which I think is the last day on April here on my release list. It's the last Friday of April, and Fridays are usually the big release days. First up on my list is one that I'm excited for by this band called O. It's spelled O-U, but it's pronounced O. And it's got the title To Frailty. It starts with some Chinese characters. I'm not sure exactly what that says. This is the second album by this band from China. They're progressive metal. Their lyrics aren't in English, so I don't understand them. They have a female vocalist, and I thought their debut from 2022 was just an excellent album. Um, really exciting to hear some new sounds that they're bringing to progressive metal. And I'm even more excited for this one because I heard Devin Townsend is involved in the production and he does a vocal feature on the album too. And I just love Devin Townsend's production. I love his vocals. He's probably my favorite vocalist in progressive metal right now who's active, maybe my favorite vocalist ever in progressive metal. And I listened to the song where he's featured on this. It's not a big feature where he plays like a super major role in the song, but it's just great to hear his voice. And the music by this band is just great. So that's O and their album 2, Frailty. Check it out if that sounds appealing to you. Next, I have Justice, or since they're a French band, maybe it's pronounced Justice. I'm not sure. And their album Hyperdrama. And this is the 4th album by this French electronic group. It's electronic. Wikipedia tells me it's kind of electro house. I'm not super well versed in electronic music to know all the different subgenres there, but I've heard some rock, some disco, some funk, some alternative influence in their electronic sound. It's kind of EDM, dancey music. And I don't usually focus on electronic music on this channel, especially not dancier stuff like this. But this is an electronic band where I've listened to a full album by them, their 2007 album Cross, I think it's called, and it's a very good album. So I'm interested to hear this one and hear if I like it as much as I like that one from 2007. Check it out if you like electronic dancey music. That's Justice and Hyperdrama. And next up, I have Accept and their album Humanoid. This is the 17th album by this German heavy metal band. Kind of a traditional heavy metal sound here. I thought their last album was good. Sounds like Judas Priest meets AC/DC to me. Had cool riffs, had catchy vocal hooks, but the lyrics were a bit cheesy, but kind of in a fun way. It's a little bit basic and derivative for me, but I can kind of accept that since they started so long ago. They started in 1976. They put out their first album in 1979. I can accept that they're going to sound a bit like aging rockers on here. I'm hoping they still bring their A game in terms of composition and performance and cool riffs and cool solos. I think their last album was good, so I expect this will be good, but not mind-blowing or anything that's going to make my year-end list. But I'm going to check it out. That's Accept and Humanoid. And then I have 6x6 releasing Beyond Shadowland. This is the second album by this multinational band. It's progressive rock. Another one where I thought their last album was good, but I'm kind of hoping this one will be even better. The band features experienced musicians like Ian Crichton from Saga, Nigel Glockler from Saxon, and Robert Barry from Three. So with this all-star cast here, I think they should be able to make some pretty awesome music. Again, their first album was good, but it didn't blow me away. I think they could do better. So let's hope that they do better on this one. And last album on my list for April is St. Vincent and her album All Born Screaming, the 7th album by this American artist. It's kind of pop rock, but it's kind of hard to describe the genre here. It's artsy, it's indie, it's electronic, new wave, kind of progressive pop, kind of psychedelic influences as well, but it's all very catchy poppy rock as well. I've never listened to an entire album by St. Vincent before, but I did check out the early release single from this album. I enjoyed it, so I'm just curious about this album as well. And that's it for my list of albums coming out in April 2024. Let me know down in the comments which of these you're most excited for, and let me know if there's any other albums coming out that you're excited for that I didn't mention, especially if you think that I will enjoy them. And if this has been useful to you and you found some new albums from this video that you're going to listen to, let me know. I love knowing that I have recommended or turned people on to things that they didn't know about that they're going to check out. Give the video a thumbs up if it's helped you out, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay in the loop on when I start talking about my first impressions of these albums or giving my top 10 out of this list at the end of April. Stay tuned for next time. Peace out.